prevent him from doing the same thing. Probably you should vote for him, because then, when he's president again, he's not going to be able to run for a third term.
I think gambling with democracy is dangerous, and that's what you're suggesting we're doing. We
In what
already
way?
have a man who's shown that he would overthrow the election. You're like, you know what, let's roll the dice again. Let's see if he does it.
No.
You agree it's possible he might do it, right?
No, I don't think
You
that's
think it's impossible. He
for
might
him
not do
to
that.
overthrow the election? I don't think...
For him to do the same electric flood and not survive the election, you think that's impossible for him to do again?
Yes, I do not think that will happen
There's
again.
no possible world where that happens.
I do not think that he is going to have the capacity.
Yeah, I mean, we already seen him do it once, and now it's impossible to do it again. Yeah, I just find.
I have a question. How's Chuck Schumer going to facilitate Donald Trump's fake elector scheme?
Sorry?
How would Chuck Schumer, the current Senate Majority Leader, facilitate a fake elector scheme? I'm acting on a practical level. That is not going to happen. So again, you can think whatever you think about Donald Trump's intent. I can think whatever I think about Donald Trump's intent. In order to actually, commit a crime, let's say this is a crime, you'd have to have motive, means, and opportunity. Okay, he doesn't have means or opportunity. So it makes it difficult for me to believe that he would do this.
Yeah, I think he will. I mean, all other... Sorry. All right, thank you.
Thanks so much.
I was back on.
Thanks.
This is the second time we've met too, by the way.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's been a long day. I thought it was a lot of fun. I mean, other than a couple of minor hiccups, I think everybody was coming at this in good spirit and wanting to have a fun conversation. There were a lot of intelligent people in the circle, and it was fun to hear what they had to say.
I think Ben was significantly more respectful than Charlie Kirk was, and a lot more well-informed than Charlie was.
I'll give him credit for being a nice guy, and he seemed to be having fun, and he seemed to be in good spirits.
With that said, I think there were a couple topics where he was being kind of dishonest. If you speak quick enough and you don't really have someone who's familiar on the topics you're talking about, we can kind of gloss over things that are kind of shaky in terms of argument. I think that Ben overwhelmingly is probably the best debater that the other side of the aisle has. However, I still think that what he stands for, what he stands behind, is really detrimental to the state of America and the people in it.
I thought that there were a couple of interesting arguments about abortion.
I didn't get a chance to speak because it was pretty competitive, but Ben's third claim about abortion being morally indefensible was so frustrating for me to hear. We are in a unique chapter of this issue in that we now have legislation that has been passed on the subject that we can look at the effects of what it's doing to our country. These are real instances of mothers who are dying because of this legislation.
I mean, that wasn't an argument, it was an emotional appeal. Everybody's entitled to their emotions.
To be fair, I didn't really expect to get too many points across because I've seen how Ben has worked, so I really wanted to kind of give him a taste of his own medicine so you can see what it's like.
Somewhat irritating when people decide to take advantage of a time to have a discussion or an argument to simply rant for minutes on end. But again, person's entitled to their feelings.
If I could name one person from the circle that I thought did phenomenal, it would be Guy. I would say Guy was probably the MVP today.
Guy did a really good job on the border, exposing how there's a lot of lies from the Republican side about the bipartisan border bill.
I've never seen a performance like that. I personally learned a lot, and I bet a lot of people at home did too.
There was a fellow who gave some interesting arguments about immigration, although I think he lacked standards with regard to what he would allow in and who he would allow in.
I actually was a bit surprised to hear him say one of those talking points that I mentioned, the 300,000 kids have disappeared. I thought he was a little above that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think Tyler did a really good job as well, especially when he sort of held Ben's feet to the fire on the issue of January 6th.
It is indefensible, and it's anti-democratic and anti-American values. And it's the one weakness I think Ben Shapiro knows he has.
Most of the reason that people are supporting Kamala Harris has almost nothing to do with Kamala Harris and simply to do with animus for Donald Trump on a personal level.
I am proudly voting for Kamala Harris. I think it's a no-brainer to make sure that the guy who has no interest in maintaining our democracy gets back in the White House.
Kamala Harris has a better economic plan, better border plan, pretty much across the board. I think she's a better candidate. If Donald Trump is elected, the average American will be worse off, and if she's elected, they will be better off. I care about closing those income inequities. Nothing is more American than that.
The question that I would ask for folks is, in the end, one of these people is going to be shaping policy. Do you like the policies that you've had for the last 4 years or not?
If you want to get a preview of how a president plans to lead, just look at who their donors are.
Today's guest is American political commentator Anna Kasparian. She is the producer and host of a hugely successful show on YouTube called the Young Turks.
I grew up in the 90s. We weren't as obsessed with dividing ourselves into these little groups based on our skin color or our gender.
I have found her to be a sane voice out of all of the crazy madness going on right now.
If the Republicans declare one thing, well, Democrats, by definition, must declare the opposite. I don't think that's the right way to look at any issue.
And it is my goal on the show to always elevate different perspectives.
They've been neglected, they've been ignored. And so they see Trump come in as like a wrecking ball to the political elite.
Anna and I are going to dig in on everything right, left, and in between.
Some of these nonprofits literally going to Skid Row and handing out crack pipes. And that's their idea of helping the homeless.
Here we go.
Keeping it real with Jillian Michaels.
I watched your conversation with Matt Walsh today. I thought it was a good conversation. I haven't seen that film at all, but I mean, he touches on something that's very real.
I watched your conversations with Ben Shapiro. And you inspired me to have that conversation with Matt Walsh.
Yeah, because I'm sure you have disagreements with him. And
Many.
yeah. And so it's interesting to find like the areas of common ground, which I think people have been dissuaded from doing for a long time now.
Yes.
And it helps to like, it basically feeds into like this dehumanizing of the other side, right? So I'm glad you're having these conversations.
Well, part of the reason I'm having them is because I've been inspired by people like yourself and people like Bill Maher. It's felt like a very bad divorce for the past 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, I would say the last decade, like the last decade's been pretty bad in terms of like tribal politics and I fed into a lot of it, so we'll talk about all that, and then realized that I was making a big mistake.
Interestingly, you are, and again, I'm ashamed to admit this, you're one of the only voices on the left I can listen to anymore. And I have found that moving center, which I'm holding on to as fast and furiously as possible, reminds me of coming out of the closet. It was that hard for me when you're like, no, I'm not gay, I'm bisexual.
Yeah.
No, and it's like, I'm liberal, I'm center, and I'm center right, but Anna, I haven't changed.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot going on with political identities, and in a lot of ways, the two parties have also realigned on certain issues. The things that I used to not like about the Republican Party have kind of been adopted by the Democratic Party, and then you have like factions within the party. Some are more extreme than others, but lately it feels as though the extreme factions of each party has kind of taken over the entire party. And that happens because people who are more, I wouldn't say centrist, but like more moderate in their views or a little more understanding and sympathetic to the other side, they just feel out of place. They feel like they're committing some sort of crime, right? That they're not being loyal enough to their tribe. And so I can totally understand feeling like as you become more and more open and honest about what you're feeling, I can see the similarity of like coming out and how scary that is. Like, it's super scary. And I know from firsthand experience how scary it is.
I've watched videos of you a year ago, and you essentially talk about feeling politically orphaned.
Homeless. Yeah.
But you identify still on the left. Talk to me about where you're at.
I'm at a point where I actually do not want to be pigeonholed in any political tribe or identity, because everything has become very dogmatic, and if you don't buy into the entirety of the dogma, you open yourself up to backlash and being, kicked out of the tribe. And it's like, it's not a fun experience. But I think when you come at every issue from a place of, all right, well, I want to get to the bottom of this story. I want to know what the truth is. What's the reality? That, first of all, allows for more exploring and understanding. And I can't emphasize enough how much happier you become once you have a better understanding of the world around you and those you disagree with politically. Because right now there's, in my opinion, this effort to like really demonize and even dehumanize the other side. And there's a lot of fear mongering going on. And if you have bought into that narrative, then you're gonna walk through life thinking that half the country is full of like neo-Nazis and, you know, they're gonna wanna harm you. They're gonna wanna, you know, destroy the country. And I just don't think that's a healthy way of looking at the other side. I think that there are gradations. I think there are, of course, extremes, but I don't think the extremes should be used to paint a picture of the entirety of the Republican voting base or vice versa.
It's either libtards and commies or Nazis.
That binary way of thinking is just not rooted in reality at all.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And that's why when I've watched you debate with Ben Shapiro, and even the preamble you guys have had for 10 minutes about, you know, I really enjoyed the relationship that we have. I really enjoyed that we can have this civil discourse. I really like you as a person. And then it's like, and you still like each other.
Yeah.
It's so comforting. I can't even tell you.
Well, I think that's how political discussions used to happen in the country. I mean, I don't know when it changed to the point where if you disagree with someone politically, well, that means that you can no longer be friendly to each other. You can't be friends. I mean, during the Trump era, so many families were torn apart over political disagreements. And by the way, I'm speaking all high and mighty. I just want to take a moment to take ownership of the fact that I fully bought into that mind frame. Like, I totally bought into that. And there's a video floating out there somewhere of me basically saying, no, you can't be friends with someone who supports Trump or has these views, because it's giving you a sense of who they really are as a person, and they're a bad person, right? That was
Deplorables.
Yeah, exactly. I remember when Hillary Clinton made the deplorable statement, and then
the Clintons. I loved the Clintons.
And then she apologized for it because she was getting backlash. And I remember at that time being upset with her for apologizing, because I had fully bought into, no, these people are deplorable, these people are terrible. And it took a lot of growing to realize that there are a lot of Republican voters who actually do not like some of the things that Donald Trump says, because he does say divisive things, he does say hateful things.
I hate that too.
But there are certain issues that he speaks to, right? Certain either economic issues, anything that might have to do with the deindustrialization of like the Rust Belt. Those are issues that really resonate with them, because no other politician has sincerely addressed those issues. They've been neglected, they've been ignored. And they've been ignored by what they view as the political elites. And so they see Trump come in, and yeah, he's a little unhinged in some of the things he says, but they see him as like a wrecking ball to the political elite, or the establishment, exactly. And once I was able to really fully grasp that and understand that, and by the way, once I started to understand the flaws in my own party, it helped me kind of begin this journey of rejecting political tribalism and not wanting to be pigeonholed into any political group. I want to feel free to think for myself and to explore ideas without feeling guilty about it. You know?
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. I think for me, as a devout liberal who always thought I was the better person, I thought we were the good guys. I really did. I was brought up that way, and I thought, if you're a Republican, you want war. If you're a Republican, you don't care. I have changed my mind on a lot of this stuff, but you're ridiculous with your gun laws. If you're a Republican, you hate gays. If you're a Republican, you're a racist. I really, honestly, took the bait. And then Trump was so belligerent when he first began running, and they're all rapists and racists coming over the border, or whatever, criminals. And that was really abrasive. And I live in a border state. We live in a border state, you know, my whole life up until recently. And it felt like an assault on all of these wonderful people I saw who were economic migrants wanting a better life.
Right.
And, you know, then it was women's right to choose, and we're taking that away, and gay marriage, that's going, and I was appalled. Then I met my wife, and oh my God, I can't believe we're married, because she was a Republican. And I was like, what is wrong with you? How could you possibly? And I'll never forget, she said, you think you're such a good person, you think you're so liberal, so understanding, you guys are the least understanding, the least accepting, and the least tolerant of anybody who doesn't agree with you. Cut to, I started hearing everywhere, or at least focusing on it, oh, well, they voted for Trump, so I had to cut them out. Oh, I haven't spoken to my mother, she's a Trump supporter. I remember seeing a post on social, and I've talked about it a lot. It was on this blog called Scary Mommy. And it was supposed to be funny. We're supposed to make fun of what shitty moms we were. It's supposed to be funny.
Right.
Which became political. And it was like, if you pray to Allah, I'll sit next to you on the bus. If you are gay married, like, I'll hold your hand. All these things about you're allowed to be on the fringe, and I will accept you. In the comments, what if I'm wearing a MAGA hat? And the answer was, well, if you're not a racist or a bigot or a this or a that, sure.
Yeah.
And I saw it. I saw it so clearly. And then another person who's friends with my wife was like, don't you understand? These people that your party is demonizing, they work 2 jobs to make ends meet. They go to church.
Exactly.
They try to be a better person. Like, they're just trying to get by, and you're calling them ignorant for being religious. Racist, bigoted, so they feel completely abandoned, disenfranchised, and demonized, and Trump is speaking to them.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, since I kind of started speaking out against some of the behaviors of the left or on the left, of course, that led to a lot of backlash from the left because you're not, you're only supposed to call out the other side. You should never, hold your own side accountable when they're engaging in intolerant behavior. But once I finally felt comfortable enough to raise concerns about how the left talks about crime, for instance, and things like that, they couldn't wait to purge me. Like, I really did notice that there was this effort to just do away with me. I'm not pure enough. I'm not good enough. Like, you're not one of us. And I had already gotten to a point in my life where I was willing to accept that treatment as long as I was able to speak my mind. And it took me at least a year, if not more, to finally feel comfortable to come out and say, no, the way that we're handling homelessness is not the right way to handle it. No, it turns out that crime is real, and there are some people in society who are a danger and a threat to the public.
Time
and
is
they
of the
should be in
essence.
prison.
Hell screams
I
eyes
was
are
saying
upon
this stuff in the left-wing era of abolish the police or abolish the prison, the prisons. And as they were trying to purge me, you have the right wing asking you to come join with open arms, right? And it's just so interesting to me. Look, I'm not a Republican, and I'm a little more socially conservative than I was when I was younger, but not on issues like gay marriage or whatever. It's more on, actually police are important and we need to reform policing, yes, but the idea that we need to, shut down prisons, which we have in California. We've shut down 4 of them. Now there's no room for inmates, and they're just releasing people as early as possible with this BS, like good behavior credits when they're behind bars. No transparency on that. We don't know, what they did to deserve to get, 20 years shaved off their sentence. But okay, so, this stuff is all going on, and I have a few views that have changed and evolved, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm in line with the Republican Party. But they don't care. They don't care that I have some differences with them. What they care about is, honestly, on one hand, if I'm being cynical, power. They understand that in order to be a powerful party, you need to be more welcoming, and you need to have broader coalitions of people. I think there's a side of the Republican Party that understands that, but there's also this faction in the Republican voting base that consists of disaffected Democrats. And I don't know if they've fully bought into what Republicans are selling, but they don't feel welcome on the left. So they've been absorbed onto the right.
Yes.
And I'm seeing the right wing change.
Yes.
They went from the neocon pro-war party to now all of a sudden, what are we doing in the Middle East right now? What are we doing in Ukraine? Why are we doing this? We have our problems here. Can we please handle our problems here? And I now see that Dick Cheney is endorsing Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is going around town talking about how honored she is. And I'm like, you're honored to be endorsed by a war criminal? I mean, if I were in her shoes, I would like pull Dick Cheney aside and be like, listen, thank you for your support, but can we just keep this on the DL?
Totally.
You know? But she's like proud of it, she's flaunting it, and that's not the party that represents me or represents my best interests.
And they've spun the narrative, though. They're like, look, even people are so worried about Trump that people like Dick Cheney have joined our side.
Yes, yes.
No. That implies that you will do his bidding. And it's playing out in real time. We're in numerous wars.
Yes.
I don't understand anything about geopolitics, but all I know is it's gotten way worse.
It has, definitely.
Like, I'm watching people die all over the world, and everyone tells me Trump is Hitler, and I'm like, well, you know, it didn't sound like it got worse over there, and now we're in a war in the Middle East, with these proxy wars. Forgive my ignorance. Like, I don't
you're
fully
right.
understand it.
They are essentially proxy wars. Yeah, and I mean, the whole reason, I don't think the U.S. government really gives a damn about Ukraine. I think the U.S. government gives a damn about weakening Russia's military capabilities.
Right, okay.
But the way the Biden administration has handled this war in Ukraine, by essentially discouraging them to engage in a peace negotiation, that was early on in the war. Now I think it's too late.
That was 2022, right?
Yes.
Kennedy talks about that.
Because early on in the war, I mean, Putin was deluded enough to think that it was going to be easy, but it wasn't easy. And so when he goes in and it's a challenge and some of their soldiers are dying and they're having difficulty, you know, taking territory, there was a moment where the two sides could sit down and actually engage in a peace negotiation that Putin was willing to engage in. Now, he's not willing to engage in a peace negotiation because he's winning. He's winning that war. And we keep giving Ukraine more and more weapons. They're now doing, you know, airstrikes and bombings in Russia, which I don't think is going to make the situation any better. And Russia has gotten closer with some of our other adversaries, including China, including Iran. So
Korea.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this was, in my view, this was all predictable. But the whole idea was we need to weaken Russia's military capability while simultaneously continuing to make our own weapons manufacturers and defense contractors real rich. So it's a form of redistribution of wealth from ordinary, hardworking Americans to a small group of executives behind these defense contractors. And so I have a huge problem with that. My views on that never changed.
Either.
So it's weird to have the Democratic Party perpetuate what's happening, you know, around the world with these wars. And the Republican Party, on the other hand, at least the voters, I want to be clear, the voters are saying, no, we're not okay with this. Okay. We don't want this. We want to get out of these wars. We want to take care of our own. And that's what I want. I want to take care of our own. So there are areas where I definitely agree with Republican voters more than Democratic voters. And that's the thing that's really throwing me for a loop, because these are the views that I've always had.
Me too.
Yeah.
Oh my God. See, this is why when you talk, I feel like I can breathe. There's a few people out there
Spirits
that,
be with you,
you know,
man.
Bill always says, like, sanity is a safe space.
Yep.
And those voices rise to the top because I think the majority of us that are in the middle who feel orphaned are finding sanity in the things that you're saying. And when I try to have this conversation with the people on the left, and I hate to, I'm trying not to shut anybody on the left out, right? But they are the least tolerant and they eat their own.
They do. That's a huge problem on the left.
They eat their own. Oh, not left enough. You're gone. Oh, really? You don't think you can be healthy at any size? Fat shamer. You're out of here. Not left enough.
Right.
Oh, you know, you're not down with the medicalization of 6-year-olds who want to be a tomboy? Transphobe.
Right. Yep. It's so true.
What is that? It's so myopic. You are forcing people to defect.
I want to be the kind of person who empowers people, inspires people, and avoids enabling self-pity in people. And I think that the other issue that I'm seeing, and again, we're making obviously blanket statements because there are gradations on the left and the right? So there are plenty of Democratic voters that are just like us. I think a lot of them are terrified to speak out And I'm hoping that by speaking out myself, it'll empower them to say what they really think and voice what their genuine concerns are. But at some point last year, the other thing that really hit me was the difference between my upbringing and what the Democratic Party espouses. I was raised by very tough parents, and I would say, like, even though I'm a millennial, an older millennial, I would say my upbringing is more similar to how Gen X was raised, right? Like,
Welcome.
But I think that was the right way, because it teaches you to be self-sufficient and honestly empowered, right? Like, I always felt empowered to choose my destiny. To, like, if I work hard, and I get it, there are issues in our government, in our system, there are things that, you know, have served as obstacles for younger generations that didn't necessarily exist for older generations. I get all of that. However, we all get to wake up in the morning and make choices for ourselves. And when I hear the Democratic Party constantly disempower people of color, because that's what they're doing. I mean, really think about it. Like, they keep using this messaging that infantilizes them and makes them seem as though, you know, if it weren't for us white saviors, you know, messing around with these laws and policies, they would never be able to survive. And I find that so gross. I'll give you a specific example. This drove me crazy. Culver City schools. They took a look at their honors program, and they realized that there was a real disparity between the white students and the Latino students. Very few Latino students had enrolled in the honors program. So they decided the right thing to do would be to just scrap the honors program altogether. And that pissed me off. And it pissed me off because, first of all, you're not actually addressing the issue here. I think those Hispanic students are capable of greatness. You just have to do the work to get them there, you know? And when you scrap the program, you're essentially communicating to all the students, no, we're gonna get rid of this opportunity because we don't believe in you guys. It's just, it's doing away with an opportunity rather than seeing what the flaws are in our education system and then rising to the occasion to help these students, you know, where we do see the disparity, you know, get to where we want them to be. That's the right way to approach it. But there's just this weird, like, defeatist mentality. And I'm honestly also very sick of, like, white people going around being offended on behalf of marginalized people.
Oh my God, they're just virtue signaling. It's disgusting.
It
It's
is.
like,
It is.
I'm the good guy.
Yep.
I will. Do you remember this? Oh
I will
my
save
God.
you. Right?
There was an ad that went around, forgive me, and it had, like, actors that I had loved. One that I trained back in the day when I was, like, 27. And it was like, I can't recall exactly, but it was like, I'm responsible. Or, I'm sorry that I didn't, and, like, you know, who knows what. Basically taking on the history of racism. And I thought, this is so cringy and awful.
I take responsibility.